Jamison Crowder! Preposterous! 5 turnovers and the lead with seconds remaining.
He's the middle run-through player. It's 2 high safeties.
Why am I playing one of the most thrilling moments of last year coming into this show on November 25th, 2 days before Thanksgiving? Because about 15 minutes ago, I was just catching up on tweets and emails like I typically do before the show. Sometimes they give me really good ideas, Max, for the show. And I got these two that I have to read. This from John. John writes, Kevin, after the big Cowboys win on Sunday and with 4 division games remaining for us, we can still technically win the division. I do this every year because I can't help myself. I'm a sick fan who wants to look at possible ways we can still make the postseason. I want to win every game and have never been in favor of getting the better draft pick. I'm the only sicko who was disappointed the Jets made that game-winning field goal on Christmas in 2023 that gave us JD5. And then I got this from Connor T. Connor T writes, Kevin, just do me a favor and check out Dallas and Philly's remaining schedules and tell me what you think about our division winning, and then in capital letters, scenarios. You guys are sick. Have you watched our team? We stink. I mean, we are the worst defensive team other than Cincinnati in the entirety of the NFL. We can't stop anybody. With that said, could the Philly games mean something? Well, Philly has Chicago on. Am I going to do this?
Oh, you're about
Am I
to
really
do it.
going to do
You're
this?
about to do it. Talk me into
Philly,
it,
this is more actually really about Dallas's decent opportunity to win the division. But Philly has the Bears on Black Friday, okay, coming up this week. They could lose that game. Then they're at the Chargers. They could lose that game. Then they play the Raiders at home. So they're going to get one more win minimum. Okay, that would be their 9th win. But they finish with Washington, Buffalo on the road, and then Washington at home. So there's only one guaranteed win left for Philadelphia, not counting the 2 against our team. Because I guarantee you any rational NFL fan is looking at Philly's schedule saying, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for Dallas because they still play the Raiders in Washington twice. That gets them to 11 wins. The best Dallas can do is 11-5-1. No, wait a minute. Yeah, 11-5-1. That means they would have to run the table to win the division. But looking at Dallas's schedule, all right, they're 5-5-1. Kansas City and Detroit the next 2 weeks. That could easily drop them to 5-7-1. They still play the Chargers and they play us on Thanksgiving. Catching Dallas, if we actually believed in our team and its potential to play much better football down the stretch, and I do think there's a chance, if everybody comes back on offense, Jayden, Terry, Noah Brown, et cetera, and everybody's healthy, I'm expecting them to play better offensively. It may be a little bit rusty to start. They also have some opponents, like the Vikings. The Vikings are pretty good defensively. The Giants, who do have a bit of a spark. Philly twice, Dallas. But, you could catch Dallas. Like the game with Dallas on Christmas Day could be for second place if you got on a little bit of a mini roll. But come on, people. Yeah, they're not. If you really want to root for mathematical contention for as long as possible, it could happen because Philly and Dallas have some tough opponents coming up. Dallas again, Kansas City, Detroit back-to-back, Philly, Chicago, and on the road against the Chargers back-to-back. Imagine this. Just imagine for a moment. Somehow Washington beat Denver and Minnesota to get to 5-8, okay? And Dallas lost to Kansas City and Detroit to fall to 5-7-1. And Philly starts to look like maybe they're plummeting like in 2023. They lose to the Bears at home this Friday and then lose on the road, and they're 8-5. Well, let me just tell you, if that were to happen on that Monday after we beat Minnesota for our second straight win, we would be talking about scenarios. Because you still play Philly twice, and Philly still has a game in Buffalo. That's it. That's it for that kind of conversation. Sorry about that. But I just read it right before the show. Legitimate from John and Connor T. And yeah, they're not. It's very possible somehow if they pull off a win Sunday night, there's a real good chance they could go a couple of weeks before they're mathematically eliminated. By the way, this was a quick audit before the show because it's in total opposite to what the calls were yesterday. Calls, as most of you know, I think, are really a kind of a tiny fraction of listenership. Most people don't call the show. And then, a very small, tiny fraction of sort of what we get in a lot of other ways, communication-wise, Twitter, email, etc. I opened up email and tweets this morning, and there must have been, like 50 to 75 Brandon Ayuk responses to our conversation yesterday. Would you or wouldn't you want Brandon Ayuk when this season is over? Brandon Ayuk, and if you watched the game last night, the 49ers-Panthers game last night, first of all, man, did you see the 3 picks that Brock Purdy threw in the first
Kevin,
half?
P.U.
I'm just glad I did not give out the Panthers last night. I was very tempted. You know that I was, and I backed off it because of some information. There was some sharp money on San Francisco yesterday, during the day, and San Francisco covered. So this has been one of the most charmed existences I've ever had with the smell test. I mean, it wins typically, but not in the way like the games I'm not giving out are typically, well, that's not true. A lot of them have one, like Houston won on Thursday night, but I'm glad I didn't give the Panthers out. But Brock Purdy threw 3 picks in the first half. And then, by the way, J.C. Horn, who had 2 of them, right? He had 2 of the picks, I'm pretty sure. He got hurt. Devastating injury for them. They had 2 of their DBs go out. They're pretty good, Carolina, on defense, and they're pretty good in the trenches. We've been talking about that for a while. They're able to run the football a little bit. They're able to do some things, but Bryce Young still, man, the biggest issue with Bryce Young is his height. It's really hard to play quarterback in the NFL at 5'9". It is really hard. I think he's a talented guy. How many balls get tipped at the line of scrimmage? They have to create like they didn't, Sean Payton's got to be his coach, because of Drew Brees and how he would create these throwing lanes in between all these big linemen. Anyway, back to the Brandon Ayuk thing. So a quick back of the envelope count. It was like 35-15 yes on Ayuk versus no. And the callers were every bit the opposite yesterday. Overwhelmingly no to yes. I will tell you that I think we had some really good calls on the subject yesterday. And I think, Paulie and a few others, I would be absolutely, if, this is the big if, and how do you know for sure? And it does appear as if it may be an issue. We'll see about whether or not Brandon Ayuk's ever going to be Brandon Ayuk again after what was a really devastating knee injury. Not your normal run, just ACL. There were multiple ligaments damaged, and that's why he's not back yet. There are other reasons he's not back yet. And for those that didn't listen yesterday or haven't heard the story, it looks like the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk, amazingly, a year and a half after they signed him to a 4-year, $120 million deal, are probably going to part ways when this season is over. I mean, unless somehow he gets himself healthy, because there was a projection of him being available by now for the 49ers. I mean, they're an 8-4 football team. You don't think if Brandon Ayuk's really healthy and getting paid they shouldn't want him on the field. I mean, I like Juwan Jennings. I like Pearsall. I like, obviously Kittle, and McCaffrey's just an unbelievable. God, is Christian McCaffrey great? He is so good. He is an absolute difference maker. One of the few at that position in the game. Barkley was, there are guys like clearly Jonathan Taylor and Bijan and Gibbs, where that position now really does impact wins. Christian McCaffrey may be the most impactful because he is every bit a receiver as he is a running back. And when he's healthy, man, that 49er offense, I know it hasn't been super dynamic at times, and it wasn't last night because the quarterback kept throwing the ball to the wrong team. 3 of them in the first half. I mean, they were screaming for Mac Jones. The 49er fan base, just as an aside, Scott and I were talking about this because he did not, in Monday Night Countdown last night, go out to Santa Clara. They did the show from New York. I don't know what the reason was for it. But anyway, we were talking about the 49er fan base. One of the underrated fan bases in the NFL. If you've ever spent any time in the Bay Area, the 49ers are it, man. It's much different than LA. San Francisco's a decent to probably pretty good sports town. It's not Southern California. And the 49ers their fans are awesome. I don't know how I got to that. Anyway, back to Ayuk for a moment. I was surprised how many people, as I was reading through this, said, Brandon Ayuk, absolutely. Have you watched our receiver situation? Yeah, I mean, most of you said the same thing. If the assumption is he's fully healthy and you don't take the massive cap hit because they're going to suffer it in the dead cap on a trade, and you're not giving up any more than, say, a conditional 3rd or 4th, something like that, based on his health and the number of games he plays, yeah, why not? I think the why not is there's just, like you could say this about Pickens, there's some guys out there when you're trying to also, build a culture, which is what they've been working on as much as they have been a football team. And I think they've done a good job with that. You do have that issue of, do you want this guy who has not shown the best of judgment over the last year and a half? Do you want him? Here's the good news. Adam Peters, Jayden Daniels, 2 rather important people in our organization. They know the player very well. They were not aggressive in the summer of 2024 on a potential trade for Ayuk. Because I think 2 reasons. Number one is I don't think the 49ers really wanted to trade Ayuk. I think they wanted to sign him. He was coming off, PFF's number 2 wide receiver season in 2023 behind Tyreek Hill. Number 2 is I think that going into the 2024 season, it was about recalibrating. They needed to figure out, who's what. They didn't know a 12-5 season and 2 playoff wins were coming. They had no clue. They thought this was going to be a recalibration, not necessarily a rebuild. They thought with Jayden, especially, they knew pretty early on he's going to give us a chance to be pretty decent on offense, even early. But they didn't expect what they ended up getting, and they just didn't do anything but dip their toes in 2024. Free agency, lots of 1-year deals, couple of multi-year deals like Luvu and Armstrong. But it was mostly trying to figure it out. So I don't think Washington was interested from that standpoint. I don't think the 49ers were interested in dealing him anyway, because Pittsburgh was very interested in Ayuk before last year. So I don't know if it's telling with respect to the way Adam Peters and Jayden Daniels, how they felt about Ayuk. It's possible they think he's a wingnut and that he's, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. It's possible that Jayden, as a friend of his from college, likes him personally and is friends with him, but might not want him on the team. I don't know. But I was just surprised, like literally looking at it. It was 35. Like I got through 50 of them, 35-15, basically. Yeah, let's do it. We need really talented players. Wide receivers, though, man, they are coming out of this draft. You just look. That's where they're all coming from, and people are drafting one after another. And I'm just going through the list of even this year, Igbuka looks like a budding star. Luther Burden was taken in the second round, man. Look out. Kyle Williams in New England. I liked him a lot out of Washington State. Look out for him. Going down the list, I mean, a ton of receivers. Early Travis Hunter, we don't know. Tet McMillan looks okay, although he drops a lot of balls. He dropped some last night. We haven't seen enough of Matthew Golden yet in Green Bay. Last year, Malik Neighbors, star. Marvin Harrison better this year. We'll see. Dunze's been a good receiver in Chicago. Brian Thomas is the weird situation in Jacksonville, regardless of what Mark and Largo thinks. Why would you want to trade him in his second year after the rookie year he had? So something's going on there. You go down the list and there are other guys that have played well. 2023, number 20 overall, top 4 receiver in the NFL right now, Jackson Smith-Njigba at number 20 in the first round. Jordan Addison towards the end of that first round. Rashee Rice in the second round. Josh Downs in the third round. Puka Nacua in the fifth round. Nacua. Demario Douglas, who's lighting it up right now for the Patriots, has one of the best separation rates in the NFL this season. Then 2022, I mean, they're just, London, Wilson, Olave, Jamison Williams. I mean, we got Jahan, and then Tennessee got Burks. But the top 4, London's, developing into a star. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamison Williams. Alec Pierce went in the second round. Who else was in that? Yeah, that's right there. That's the reason you don't do it. It's a position that is really producing if you get it right in the draft. And it, like we mentioned, it doesn't have to be the first round. There are guys that are performing like Nacua and a few others a little bit later than that. So, yeah, you don't have to pick up that contract, which gets very pricey base salary-wise. I mean, Amon-Ra in 2021 was a 4th-round selection. Terry, we know, was a 3rd-round selection. Nico Collins was a 3rd-round. Man, that 2021 draft, right? Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, top 3 receivers taken. Then Kadarius Toney, bust. Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore. God, I know the team liked Elijah Moore. You know who liked Elijah Moore a lot? Was Scott Turner. Loved Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. I don't even know where he is right now, to be honest with you. Where is he?
Jets, I think.
Elijah Moore. Yeah, you might be right about that. He was drafted by the Jets, but is he still with the Jets?
Nope, he's with the Bills now.
Bills. Okay. Nico Collins, 3rd round in that. Amon-Ra, 4th round. The guy that's in Pittsburgh right now, Skoranek, the guy that was with the Rams, he's playing pretty well. 7th round. I mean, that's really the best argument for, no, we don't need to trade for a receiver, especially one that may have a screw loose and a bad knee. I'm with you. All of you people that said no, I'm with you. Even if he's totally cleared. He is a really good receiver, though. He was in 2023. Make no mistake. It's like we've had conversations about, a lot of you didn't even want Myles Garrett in the offseason. Seriously. I mean, when we took some of those calls and talked about his availability, I remember a lot of you saying, yeah, he's really not very good against the run. I'm like, you're getting 2 players in one. He's the only player in the league that counts twice other than Mahomes. Yeah. So that was interesting, though, the Ayuk conversation. And yes, I got all of your emails and tweets about me being off on that video. I said it on the air. I didn't know. Max was not forceful enough with me with what he thought might be a possibility, which was that was an old video. I didn't hear him say it to me, and I went with thinking it was recent when it was actually a few weeks ago before Washington's game against Seattle on Sunday Night Football. So when Jayden told Brandon Ayuk in that video, yeah, I'm back on Sunday night again, that was for the Seattle game. Now, Dan Quinn did talk about Jayden Daniels and his availability. And we're going to talk about some of the things. He was asked multiple questions about Jayden Daniels during his presser yesterday. We'll get to that and more. But no, I am not Connor T. I am not John. I'm not entertaining any sort of scenario talk. If Washington can beat Denver and Minnesota and Philly loses to Chicago and then the Chargers and Dallas loses to the Chiefs and to the Lions, then we can talk. We can talk about, at that point, nearly being able to control your own destiny. Let me just, in all seriousness, you would be one game away from controlling your own destiny if Philly lost the next two and Dallas lost the next two, and we beat Denver and Minnesota. Just saying. But I've watched our team. I've done this in years past, but I have always done this when I've actually felt like they were capable of winning games. I don't think this team is capable of running the table because their defense is so hideously awful. It's so bad, even with Quinn calling the defense. And it did look a little bit better, but the opponent was also different. And yeah, the Broncos, Vikings, Giants, the next three opponents, even the Eagles to a certain degree offensively. But we can't stop anybody. Everybody gets healthy against us, except for Miami, I guess. All right. We'll talk next about some of the things that Dan Quinn said yesterday about Jayden Daniels. Herm Edwards joined me on my podcast. You'll hear that on the show today. We'll do some of our NFL talk today because we've got a shortened week with today and tomorrow before Thanksgiving Day. What an NFL weekend coming up, though. Seriously, I think maybe the best triple header Thanksgiving Day lineup. I mean, how many years does it start with a Lions, game against the Bears that's terrible, a Cowboys team that isn't any good playing against somebody that isn't any good, and then sometimes even the night game isn't good. How about Packers Lions 7-3-1 against 7-4, Chiefs 6-5, and the Cowboys 5-5-1 coming off their comeback wins, and then the importance of Thanksgiving night for the Ravens against the Bengals. And did you hear the news? We talked yesterday. I said something's not right with Lamar Jackson. He just doesn't look right. Yeah, he's got a toe injury, apparently, in missed practice yesterday. He's definitely not the Lamar Jackson that we know as a runner. He's almost avoiding running. And I got to tell you, no matter how improved he has been in the last year and a half as a passer, it's still not anywhere near what he's best at. He's best as a dual threat quarterback. And in the last two games, he's got 21 yards rushing. 21 in 2 games. All right, some of the stuff that Quinn said yesterday about Jayden Daniels when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. All right, for you Maryland basketball fans, if you stayed up last night, the game tipped off after midnight Eastern. I did not. I recorded it and woke up at my normal time, which is far too early. Not really too early, I would say. A lot of people get up that early. And I watched it this morning. Maryland last night out in Vegas beat UNLV in basketball 74-67. It was one of those early season, holiday college basketball games between two teams with a lot of new players that was really at times hard to watch. Maryland had 15 turnovers in the first half, ended with 20 turnovers in the game, and won by 7. I mean, that just typically doesn't happen. By the way, their big guy, Pharrell Payne, who, had this gruesome looking fall in a game a week and a half ago at Marquette in the game that the Terps won. And everybody thought he's done. He's done. He was back last night. Let me tell you something. They would be in for a long, long season without this guy. He is their one big that can do it. He is 6'10", athletic, a rebounder. If you followed him, started at Minnesota, was at Texas A&M. He had 20 last night, 8 rebounds in the game. And really without him, I don't know who would grab a rebound. But they got some players. There's some guys. This guy Coit, who had 41 last week against Mount St. Mary's. They got Miles Rice back last night. I really like the way he plays, his pace, etc. But the reason that this is, even a topic today is Buzz Williams's post-game interview on TNT. So the game was on TNT last night. Again, it probably ended at like 2:30 in the morning, something like that. I watched it super early this morning. The turnovers were so hideous. Buzz is a different dude. Those of you who are college basketball fans know that he's just different. He's very thoughtful in answers, takes a while to get to it. He's mathematical. He's very analytical. But he's also got a very dry sense of humor. I think, I remember the day he got introduced, and he was talking about his family out at Xfinity Center, and he was talking about one of his sons. He said, I got a son that plays college basketball. He plays at East Texas State. He said, if you're wondering where East Texas State is, he said, it's in Texas, and it's in the eastern part of Texas. And I don't even think he's trying to be even like a bit humorous, but it comes off that way. This was his interview last night. I forget who's doing the interview for TNT. And the turnovers were the story. Somehow Maryland overcame all these turnovers and won the game. Here was Buzz Williams afterwards.
Coach, if I would have told you this morning that your team would commit 20 turnovers over the first 27 minutes of this game, would you have given your team a chance?
Just really bad. Really bad. It's a problem. It's been a problem. And in some ways, we've done better with that problem. We have a long list of problems. But the last week and a half, that one's kind of been on the shelf. I don't know how many we had at halftime. I think it was 15, and we were down 3. Like, just let the clock go off and give them the ball. So it's a dead ball turnover. And mathematically, we would have a better chance. A lot of it is a credit to Coach Pastner and their team constantly changing what they were doing in the full court and in the half court. But our ability to recognize it and handle it and make good decisions from it, we've got to fix it if we can while we're in Vegas. But long term, you can't play like that analytically. It's just too much to overcome.
Well, Coach, you got to overcome 22 hours before your next one. Good luck against Gonzaga.
Well, they'll score 100 in the first half if we turn it over 15 times in the first half. So I know Coach is really good, Hall of Fame. I know their team is as old as anybody in the country and really talented. I don't know anything other than that. So we've got a lot of work to do on ourselves.
Get some rest, Coach. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Guys.
Buzz Williams last night after Maryland's win. We would have been better off letting the clock run out and handing them the ball. that would have worked out better for us mathematically. By the way, it's true. Like, turnovers in basketball are just so bad when they are live ball, especially, if you are outside and they don't happen underneath the basket. You get a live ball turnover from the free throw line extended towards half court, and you're in big trouble, because it's a run out and it's a dunk or it's a layup or it's a foul on the other end, and they're going to the free throw line. They wasted 15 possessions, 15 shot opportunities. I love when coaches talk about turnovers because he's right. Like, you could have just handed it over. You could have, just thrown the ball away on the baseline and been better off than what they ended up doing, which were a lot of live ball turnovers. The other thing, too, is that, and you will hear coaches occasionally say this, a terrible shot is much better than a turnover. At least if you throw it up on the rim, you have a chance to go get it. Or they rebound it near the rim rather than having it out front. It was painful to watch. Buzz, I've watched a lot of his press conferences following these games. He's a real interesting guy. He's definitely into heavy math and analytics when it comes to what they should do and what they shouldn't do. The irony is it's not necessarily a three-point driven analytic philosophy. His is really about offensive rebounding, free throw differential. They against Mount St. Mary's, they were like 37 of 47 or something like that from the free throw line. Hard to get to the free throw line if you keep turning the ball over on offense, but they got the win. And tonight they play Gonzaga. Gonzaga ranked 12th in the country. They beat Alabama last night, who was number 8 in the country, by 10. So the Terps get Gonzaga tonight. That game starts at a reasonable time. That game starts tonight at 9:30 on True TV, but also right here on your home for Maryland basketball, the Team 980 with Johnny Holiday and Chris Naki on the call. One other real quick thing in my what do you got, because somebody sent this to me. The over-under in the Browns-Raiders game on Sunday was 36.5, I believe. I think it was the lowest over-under of the year. And there was something that happened late in the game, which impacted the over-under total, with the Browns up 24-10. And a minute left in the game, and they had a 4th and 2 at the Vegas 29-yard line. People were screaming, if you had the over, kick the field goal. Let's get it to 27-10. That'll put it at 37 over the 36.5. Do you know what Cleveland did on 4th and 2 at the Raider 29-yard line with a minute left in the game?
Kneel it out.
No, they punted.
That's awesome.
I wonder what the best field position punt of all time is. That's got to be close to it, right?
You'd think, yeah.
Because at the very least, what you're going to do is you're going to try to, draw them off sides and take a 5-yard penalty back to the 34 and punt it. Now, they might decline it and make you punt. But if you're down 14, you don't want them to kick the field goal. So you'd probably take the 5-yard penalty. I wonder if anybody, there's got to be like there's got to be some sort of stat out there. Best field position punt in NFL history. I bet it's not the 29. I bet somebody's punted from the 28 or 27 before. Especially if you're going into the wind and it's 4th and long. But really, like, why didn't they just go for it on 4th and 2? Like, if you're what are you trying to, your field position gain? Let me just see what the punt did. He punted it 19 yards to the Vegas 10. So they picked up 19 yards of field position. With that defense, it really doesn't matter where the other team takes over. They're not going to score. But anyway, people, I can only imagine what that was like in a sports book, somewhere with a lot of overs and unders on the game, because 36.5 was the lowest total of the year. And that, typically when you have a really high total or a really low total, it gets the attention of bettors, and so they bet it one way or the other. I would imagine the under was the need for sports books. I looked at it, and it looked kind of a little bit towards the overs, not by a lot. But they punted at the Vegas 29-yard line. That's that hurt if you had the over for sure. All right, when we come back, you'll hear what Quinn said about Jayden Daniels yesterday. Kevin Sheehan showed the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
Dan, I know you want to focus on what's right now, but with Jayden Daniels, reports out, going to be returning to practice this week. I'm just curious what you can tell about what he'll be able to do this week.
Yeah, it has been good. He will be able to return to practice. We had our first session today, but Johnny has not been cleared for contact. So, he'll probably be unlikely to play. But, man, it's good to get started and get the return to play going. So that's a big deal for us.
Dan Quinn yesterday talking about Jayden Daniels. So we heard the reporting, I think late in the show maybe or right after the show, Max, that Jayden Daniels was cleared to practice but unlikely for Denver. I think it kind of means we're going to see him against Minnesota a week from Sunday in his first outing, not this week. I do wonder if there's any chance he's actually fully healthy and could play against Denver, but they'd rather him not play against the league's, top 3 defensive team in the league. I don't know. I doubt it. We'll see about Terry. Terry's apparently doing better. Noah Brown, the 21-day practice window opened up for him. And so maybe by the time we get to Minnesota, they've got the full allotment offensively. There were other Dan Quinn sound bites. So the follow-up question from John was, how important is it to see Jayden back out on the field this year? Here's what he said.
And how important is it for you to see him back out there playing again this year?
I think it's important as Jayden's getting going, learning to play this position at the highest level competitively, also doing it safely. And those are reps, that you develop as well. It's a skill just like throwing and processing. And so all those things are important, but him included, it was awesome today to have everyone really back at practice, John, including 3 guys that were in their 21-day window and too early to call a lot of the guys, for the game, but getting on the field and having the guys here, John, that was a big deal, man, to have that many. It's been a long time since I've said that out loud of everybody's here and working. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be nice to actually see, some of the team you anticipated putting out there, especially on offense, all, on the field together, and the possibility existing that they might all be able to play, whether it's this coming Sunday night or the following week, because it's really been since the opener, right? I think that was the last time Washington was completely healthy on offense. I guess for the Green Bay game, although Noah Brown available for the Green Bay game, or was he hurt after the Giant game? I'm forgetting now. It's all running together. But, there's something that I wish I had heard Dan Quinn say in that answer, because he talked about, learning to play the position, learning how to do it safely, getting those reps. Those reps on learning how to play the position safely are just as important as, throwing and processing and all those reps. Part of me just wishes, at this point, he would just say, well, the importance of seeing our Daniels play again is he's our starting quarterback. He's our franchise quarterback, and we haven't seen enough of him this year. He's played 5.5 games. We want our starting quarterback out on the field playing for us. There was one more that I wanted to play from Quinn. This was a question that opened up, the opportunity for Quinn to answer, any thought the organization has had about shutting Jayden Daniels down.
Dan, you said Jayden's unlikely to play against Denver. Do you have in mind kind of a calendar or an expectation for when you think you'll see him on the field in a game? And was there at any point any consideration at all to saying, let's shut him down?
Yeah, the first part, Howard, I'll say I didn't have a long-term space until you got more spots from the doctors, meaning how's the healing coming? Where is that going to go? The extension and flexion of the elbow. So once we knew that was headed in the right direction, then that, it would kind of take care of itself. When, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that part, I don't know. And I still don't have all the answers on that. That's kind of how the player heals and where he's at. And then as far as that's not something we really discussed internally. The first part for us, honestly, Howard, was like, hey, how are we going to get the player better? And let's dig in on that first, not knowing the exact time frame. So that's really where the focus was, right away and right off the bat. We knew we had the bye coming, and then we'd have a chance to regroup and huddle up and, kind of push from there.
So there you go. I mean, they did not necessarily consider shutting him down. Again, part of me is like, well, no, we would never consider shutting down our starting quarterback. He's our starting quarterback. If he's healthy, he's going to play. There's, I guess, scenarios in which you don't play your starting quarterback, like you've already clinched going into the final week of the season, or going into the final week of the season, it's so bleak and you're really now the season's over. This conversation to me is, it's an interesting one, and everybody's certainly entitled to their opinion. This from Dak Q2 in capital letters. Kevin, shut him down. Let's get to 2026, and that can be his second season. Well, no, actually, that would be his third season in the league. I know some of you agree with this. It's definitely a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of the way people feel. I mean, I've seen people in media, call for shutting him down. I've seen ex-players call for shutting him down. I've seen others say, well, that's just stupid. Why would you do that? I mean, we've talked about this. I personally think the idea of shutting your starting quarterback down with 30% plus of the season left is silly. It's just not, like, in what world do you shut a healthy starting quarterback down for a third of the season, nearly a third of the season? Jayden Daniels is the franchise's starting quarterback. The starting quarterback, whether he's in his second year, fourth year, eighth year, or 15th year, plays. That's what you do when you're the franchise quarterback and you're healthy. Let me be clear. We've talked about this. He doesn't play unless he's 100% healthy. Nothing wrong with the elbow, nothing wrong with the hamstring, nothing wrong with the knee. He is healthy and ready to go, period. Doctors say there's nothing. None of these issues he has are like long-term or risky to play with. If the doctor says, hey, the elbow looks good, man, he can go out and play. I mean, it's not 100, but who cares because it's not his throwing elbow. No, he's not playing. So the given here is he's 100% cleared. He's good to go. He's Jayden Daniels health-wise. And if he is, he's our starting quarterback. And with 30% of the season left after Sunday, more than that, with 6 games left, we're at 34.5 or 35% of the season left. You don't shut your starting quarterback down for a third of the season. And it doesn't even have anything to do with getting him reps because he's a young player. Who does that? Joe Burrow's coming back to play earlier than expected off of a true long-term risk, turf toe, and they're 3-8. Why? Because he's the starting quarterback. Again, if there's a game left or 2 left, that's different. 5 games left, 6 games left. I mean, there are other reasons for Jayden Daniels in his specific circumstance. Second-year quarterback, only played 5.5 games this year, needs the reps. Why would he, as a second-year player, everybody else in the locker room is looking around saying, we got our guys fully healthy. What are we doing? I mean, what it could cause in the locker room, what it could cause with Jayden, who is a hyper-competitive dude. Those are good reasons. But the number one reason is he's the starting GD quarterback for your team. And he's 100% healthy. Again, the assumption being he's playing with 5 games, 30% left of the season left. That's what you do. You don't shut your franchise starting quarterback down in late November or early December. If you want him to sit in the season finale at Philadelphia, if he's looked good and the offense has performed at a reasonable level, with everybody back for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and you want to, in that case, you should just let Josh Johnson start the final game of the year. Don't even put Mariota out there. No reason to. I get that. season finale. Even the final two, if they've had 3 really good weeks or whatever. But I'll tell you what, man, like at Minnesota, at the Giants, Philly twice, Dallas, 5 games. It makes no sense from my vantage point why your starting quarterback wouldn't play in those games. The season finale notwithstanding. I got this from TJ. TJ wrote, playing Jayden in games where the final result doesn't mean anything is a waste. It's not even a good evaluation of where he is. There is something to be said for, games that you're mathematically eliminated in, and what kind of true environment is. Like every game in the NFL, when there are 17 of them, right? At least the first 12 typically are, hey, we got to win this game. Both teams trying to win the game. And then when you get into mid to late December, unless you're a really bad team, and Washington could be that at 3-11 in 3 weeks, could be. You can say, well, you're just playing out the string. It's not the same evaluation. I hear you on that, TJ. I do, but it's not a preseason game. The game that they play against Philadelphia on Saturday, December 20th, even if they lose the next 3, right? So they're 3-11. That's not a preseason environment. And I'll tell you what, it makes a difference if the team you're playing has something to play for, which is the case this coming Sunday night against Denver, and will likely be the case in the Philly and Dallas games over a 5-day period, December 20th, Saturday, and then Christmas Day, the 25th. The motivation in those games, to play spoiler, I don't know. I think it's a legit environment for evaluation, but I get what you're saying. It's not like, if that's why when you get to the season finale and you really are playing out the string, even maybe the last 2, and you've gotten all you needed over the last 3 weeks of seeing him out there and playing, okay, that's a different conversation. But the conversation on November 25th, shut him down? It's the dumbest. I don't want to say it's the dumbest. It's silly. It's soft. It's, there's no guarantee. What happens if he gets hurt in the opener next year and he's out for 6 weeks? No, he's the starting quarterback. He's going to play if he's healthy enough to play. And we'll get the benefit. They'll get the benefit of him playing and him getting the reps. Those are all good reasons in his situation to put him out there. But number one is he's the organization's face. He's their quarterback. He's already proven to be, more likely than not, a franchise quarterback, talent-wise, production-wise from last year for sure. He's out there in early December. I think he's going to play against Minnesota. We'll see. Maybe I don't want them to put him out there if he's not 100. That's a different. We're all in agreement on that, I think. I don't think anybody's saying, yeah, the knee's still a little bit messed up. The elbow's not exactly where they want it to be, but, he can do it. No, nobody wants that. That would be irresponsible. But the other is something I don't really understand. You get starting quarterbacks in the NFL. We've thrown out the final week of the season deal, and maybe, he sits for that one. You get starting quarterbacks, especially when they're young, playing right through the season. Caleb Williams and Bryce Young and others played right through the end of the season last year. Why wouldn't they? They're their franchise's starting quarterbacks. All right, when we come back, switching subjects, what's the one thing you'd go back and fix? The one thing you'd go back and do or undo from the off season for this football team? Like, what has kind of over the course of this season have you said, damn, they should have done this, or damn, they should not have done this? What's that one thing at the top of your list? There are a lot of possibilities. I'll get to mine, and I want yours at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. What's the one thing, if you could go back and fix it from the off season, do or undo? What's that one thing you would have done or undone? It may have been something that you were saying at the time. It doesn't have to be. This can be, hindsight being 50-50, as Steve Spurrier once said. But what's that one thing that you go back and do or undo? We sit here at 3-8, 2 days before Thanksgiving, really having no hope. Season is lost, despite what we opened up the show with. A few people that have figured out that with 4 division games left, it might be a few weeks before we're actually mathematically eliminated. But anyway, I digress. What is the one thing, your number one overall? All right, I have a list of a lot of things, but I'm going to give you my number one. Although it's really it's basically like a very close 1 through 5 list, but I'm going to give you number one because it was something we certainly contemplated during the off season. We weren't sure, though, what the answer was, and I'm not even convinced that we're still sure that this was the answer. But there were some pretty good defensive coordinators out there in the offseason. Robert Saleh was available. Brandon Staley was available. I'm not saying he would have come here. Lou Anarumo was available. Jeff Ulbrich, who has coached with Dan Quinn before, was out there doing a pretty good job in Atlanta. I think that, yes, the talent wasn't good enough, and the injuries obviously are the number one reason the defense is as bad as it is. I'm not even putting it all on Joe Witt Jr. I don't think you can. I've told you guys this throughout this season. From what I've been told going back to when it really started to fall apart, it's like it's everything. It's not just him. But I thought last year that the players they had weren't like the worst players in the world. Frankie Louvu had an exceptional year. They had, Bobby Wagner playing at a decent level. They had some players playing at decent levels, and yet the actual output last year just wasn't good enough, especially against the run. And I think that, on my list, and I'll get to some of the others after we take calls and get to some of yours, there's a lot of personnel decisions. They need better personnel on defense, but I think I would have, they got to it eventually. And I don't think they got to it just because they felt like they had to do something. I don't think that's true. A lot of you, since he was demoted, have said they should have done this a while ago. They don't really even want to do it. They feel like they have to do something. Just like, moving on from Matt Gay, who, by the way, was 2 for 2 last night, right? I think he was 2 for 2 last night for the 49ers. Of course he was. I think given the number of really solid, get more out of less experienced defensive guys that were out there. By the way, I didn't even throw out Dennis Allen. Like Allen, Anarumo, Saleh, Staley, Ulbrich. I think I would have as much. Look, this isn't me making the decision about a friend, but I'm just saying my number one, and it's a close one with 3 or 4 others. I mean, there's a lot to choose from with this question. I think I would have replaced Joe Witt Jr. in the offseason with somebody a lot more experienced. 301-230-0980. Max, what's your number one?
So my number one, we've been kind of talking about it. Me and some callers, and I mentioned it to you before, but getting the Terry deal done, I think would have been helpful for everybody involved, especially Terry, and just keeping him healthy, keeping him on the field, keeping him on the practice field, getting him warmed up and ramped up at the right time. Same with everybody else. Now there's never really going to be any concrete evidence whether or not that's going to keep him healthy throughout this season. But I mean, if you have more time to, ramp up and get to game shape, you're probably not going to be as injured as you are throughout this season. So I think hindsight being 2020, like going into this season, if you understand that he's going to be injured going into it, I would think it would have been worth the extra money to just sign him, get him back on the practice field, get him ramped up, get the offense looking like a semblance of what it looked like last year. And maybe that makes all the difference in the season. Who knows? But yeah, I think getting the Terry deal done would be one of the things that I would, at the top of my mind, change.
Yeah, when I thought about this, I thought that was going to be a big answer from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, just, suck it up, overpay him, get it done. This is window number one. When the season ended last year, I had my list, and I keep it, near me every day. Window number one, Jayden's rookie deal. What do they need to do? I said culture continuation. You have to bring back Mariota, Wagner, Ertz, and I said even Chin. Number two is defense, specifically edge-setting defensive end, and I had S as in ends, but you also need pass rush. Number three on my list was you got to figure out Lattimore. Like, if there's a concern, culture fit-wise, playing-wise, you've got to address corner. Don't fear cutting your losses before they lead to more losses. You've built up enough equity in 1 year to admit our bad. Next up on my list was maybe a left tackle in the draft. I put that down on my list, even though there was a feeling that Coleman was going to be the guy. And remember, the Tunsil trade was a jaw-dropping surprise. And then I wrote another number 2 wide receiver and or running back. And then lastly, I wrote kicker, please. That was window number 1, off season number 1. So now in hindsight, to me, number 1 would have been, given the number of talented, experienced defensive coordinators out there, I think I would have moved on from Joe Witt Jr. much earlier than what they did. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What's the one thing you'd go back and fix? What's the one thing you'd go back and do that wasn't done, or undo that was done? Let's start with Fuad. Fuad in Silver Spring. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Kevin, how's it going, man? I love the show. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So I would change the overall approach. I think from the off season, from minicamp, from training camp, it was a very soft approach. I mean, I went there myself one of the days, took my kids there, and we have read all of the reports that there wasn't a lot of intensity. There was kind of a lot. It was as if you would have expected it. The vibe that I got from reading the reports was like this was a camp of a team that's been to 5 Super Bowls, that's been to championship games, that been there and done that, that's proven that they're a proven commodity and a year in, year out contender. And I really do feel like it's not a coincidence from the first preseason game, that first play, first opening kickoff against New England,
right?
We've been getting
Travion Henderson.
We never got into a rhythm in any of the games. And I know that Jayden didn't play a lot, but just from an operational perspective, offense, defense, special teams. Now, special teams has been really good throughout the season, but we just never looked like we had everything together. And I don't think that that's not a coincidence. I mean, DQ last year was great with his situational football, with his awareness of time and score and knowing when to go for it and having a good feel. And this year, it's just been so off. Like he's looked like he's just been behind the 8 ball. Like he's going for it when he shouldn't be going for it. I just think the overall approach was they leaned too much into this quote unquote culture that they've built, which I have a big problem with, because it seems like you don't have to the great teams that win, they don't have to constantly talk about culture. They just do it, right? It's just a part of what they do and who they are. They don't have to constantly preach catchphrases. And to me, I feel like you have to talk about that stuff when you are.
Okay. Yeah, we're losing you a little bit. But yeah, thanks, Fuad, for the call. I've heard the soft camp, the training camp approach wasn't, intense enough. Look, you might be right. I just don't know if it's a lot different than other camps. It might be. I certainly did not get the sense about training camp or the off season that they felt like they had arrived. I didn't get that sense at all. I mean, I've had some of you people reach out and say, Jayden, didn't approach this season the way he approached his rookie season because he already felt like he arrived. That's absurd. There's no proof of that whatsoever. No evidence of that whatsoever. I don't think that was it. You might be right in terms of, was it too soft of a camp? They didn't have some of their key players going back to the offseason. No Terry, no Noah Brown for a lot of the offseason, so there wasn't, a lot of opportunity for year 2 chemistry to evolve. And ultimately it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because these players got hurt and weren't available to the team anyway. But I can't really give you a firm answer as to whether or not that there's any truth to that. My gut is that there's not. I know what the preseason games looked like, but they're preseason games. The players that were scheduled to play in the regular season did not play in those games. Now, if you want to say that they should have taken a different approach, and by the way, a different approach than most teams in the NFL, and played their starters in the preseason, and that would have gotten them ready, okay. I'm not against that. I've never been against that. I don't like the preseason opportunities that they basically decide not to take advantage of. There definitely was again, not with their own players. Actually, the irony is some of these players that did play in preseason games that eventually got cut did come back and play for them this year, including a lot of guys that weren't on their preseason roster. But remember, there were a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of penalties. Weren't there a lot of penalties in that New England game? It was Travion Henderson who returned that opening kickoff for a touchdown, right? Wasn't it? Here, yeah, Travion Henderson. First preseason game, they had 13 penalties. And you guys went wild, and I said, well, yeah, I'd be upset too. But none of the players that are going to play for them when the season starts against New York played in the game. And now, if you want to say it set the tone, I don't know, man. It's tough for me to jump on board with that. I think the preseason is just, it's abysmal. Everything about it. I mean, look at what was coming out of camp in hindsight. Oh my God, this secondary. How many times did we hear about how the secondary had made a massive leap and that this was going to be the strength of the football team other than on defense? I mean, they couldn't cover from the jump. Let's go to G. G, what's the one thing you'd go back and fix, either do or undo from the offseason?
My first one, I would have kept Diami Brown instead of Noah Brown.
One. That's on my list too.
And like there's so much broke stuff, you got to name more than just one, because I'd have bet on Brian Robinson Jr. instead of making Eckler your bell cow, because he always gets hurt, and he definitely got hurt. I would have kidnapped Joe Witt and Dan Quinn to make sure they really had a solid plan to get their defense better, because it looks way worse than it did last year. And like, I laughed when you called it soft, Sheehan, talking about the people that say shut them down. It's soft. It's soft. No, it's not. Hey, Sheehan, would you put new tires on a car that was totaled? Like, because this season is that car. It's totaled. So we're going to keep them tires in the garage until we get the new car. And that's next season.
I call G soft. He's your starting quarterback.
Because
he's your starting quarterback.
No.
Yes, he is.
He's your GD. He's your GD starter quarterback, and that's why you play him. No, you sit him down and you err on the side of caution. You call it soft all you want, but
what do you want to do? Err on the side of caution next year when they start off 0-5? If they start out for 0-3?
Why are you See, you and I are speaking negativity into existence.
Negativity? I'm positive. That's a positive response.
Listen,
my quarterback's playing. I'm not fearing. I'm not fearing it for him. I need to see him play.
Ain't no fearing. This is a lost season, so I'm not going to play
Well,
it when it
was
don't matter.
borderline lost heading into the Seattle game. Should we have sat him then? In the first week in November?
Because you still you shouldn't have, because you still had a chance to. You could have beat Seattle, you could have beat Detroit, and you could have beat Minnesota. That's the team.
It's silly. It's silly and it's soft. It's silly. It's soft, and it's too much fear for me. Way too much fear for me. You want to do it in late December, early January, different conversation. I'm not shutting down my franchise quarterback with nearly a third of the season left if he's completely healthy.
We're out of it.
Who cares? We're not at. First of all, technically we're not.
No.
Technically we're not out of it.
No.
Okay, we're not out of it mathematically yet.
No, we definitely are mathematically.
But we're not mathematically out of it.
In any scenario that you come up with, we lose every tiebreaker.
Actually, they're not mathematically eliminated yet. That's just a fact.
Yeah, we're going to talk scenarios next week. I'm telling you, I done watched this. We lose every tiebreaker.
I can't believe you want to sit him and basically go into year 3 with him having played 5.5 games when he was healthy enough to play 11 games. Doesn't make any sense to me.
You called it soft.
But that's not the question. So is De'Ami Brown your number one?
I already gave you mine, but I'm just saying.
Is it De'Ami?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. De'Ami Brown, not being coachable. Forget y'all. Hell to the Redskins.
Happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you. Paulie, go ahead. What's the one thing you would fix, you would do or undo from last off season?
Hell to the W, man. Hell to the W, big guy.
Yeah.
Hey, I got 2 things. I'm uncoachable too. The first thing, man, the players that was on 1-year prove-it deals, our own players, like De'Ami, Jeremy Chin, Dante Fowler, I would have brought those guys back because they proved it to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then the second thing is, I would have opened up the checkbook in the offseason, man. I wouldn't have brought back Wagner, but I would have threw Vaughn to eat the middle linebacker from the Eagles and Josh Sweat. I would have signed both of them dudes, man.
Sweat's on my list. Milton Williams is on my list.
Those are 2 things in the offseason, man. I'm a true believer in signing your own people's back, especially if you had them on 1-year deals, and they proved it to you. They proved their worth. They proved their value, and you just casted them off for cheaper options. You never replaced Dante Fowler and his 12 sacks, So, but I would have, and like I said, they should have opened up the checkbook in the offseason. They didn't do that, man. They went cheap.
Well, they did and they didn't. They made a massive trade for Laramie Tunsil, who they're going to have to pay massive money to in this upcoming offseason. So that's one. Two, they're paying De'Ami, 18, 19 for this year. But you're right. Like, I wrote down Sweat, Milton Williams and De'Ami Brown. Like, I would have De'Ami signed a 1-year, $10 million deal in Jacksonville. De'Ami became a very important player to the offense. I would have brought him back. I would have paid him enough so he would have said yes and would have come back here.
Sheehan.
What?
Yeah. Sheehan. 8 carries, 171 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You got to go get Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, no. Syracuse is terrible. But you're going to see him in some massive games in December and early January. Because Notre Dame's legit. Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you. Anthony in DC, what's the one thing you'd go back and fix, do or undo off-season wise?
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Man, you could pick straws out of a hat and come up with everything.
There's a lot.
I think the one thing that set the tone for the off season was the Terry negotiation. Now, I'm not saying he should have got the Jamar money or the JJ money or anything like that, but they could have come up more than they did. But also, they could have said at some point early in the negotiation, We're not coming above this range. Take it or leave it. With the intent of potentially getting him into camp early to get things going. To me, Terry's negotiation was the tone setter for the year. Now, some people remember Reggie Jackson said he was the straw that stirs the drink.
Yeah.
Well, Jayden is the straw that stirs the drink. For us, Terry is the drink. That's how much sway Terry holds over in my opinion, that's how much sway Terry holds over the team from a leadership standpoint, from a communal standpoint within the locker room, all that kind of stuff. That set the tone for the season, in my opinion.
I'm not going to disagree. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with the tone setting. It didn't look. The bottom line is, if he had been healthy, and no one can ever prove that the soft tissue injury, although people predicted it, including Paulie, after missing that much camp, but you really can't prove that necessarily. I'm not going to disagree that it really set, kind of a tone. I think what's not understood by most is, the impact or lack thereof of impact on the actual locker room. I don't think that it was a big impact to the players that were there and working to get better. I think it was a disruption to the chemistry evolution of Terry and Jayden, year 2 system, second year in the system, Debo being added to it, a new offensive line look, etc. But I don't think it was like a cultural blow. Remember early on, people were like, if you don't take care of Terry, I mean, no one's going to want to come here, and the locker room's going to implode. I don't think that was the case at all. I think there was actually some recognition of, man, you're asking for way too much. Let's get some reality here and get your ass in here. Now, the other thing about just playing hardball with him from a team standpoint, people have suggested, well, they should have said, take it or leave it. And if you don't, we're going to start finding the crap out of you, or we're going to consider trading you. First of all, he was not a tradable player because of his contract demands. He was not tradable. Number 2 is, if you had really played hardball, that's when you may have risked looking like the bad guy for the locker room and others around the league. If you had said, because remember, they didn't fine him when they could have fined him. There was a period of time when his holdout was finable and they didn't, when his hold in was okay and acceptable to them. So they could have been tougher, but they like him and they wanted him and they wanted it to work out. That's the underrated or under-discussed, not that we haven't, part of the whole thing is the reason that they went to him when they didn't have to is because they do like him and they did want him back. But what happened was he felt like the numbers were insulting and it just deteriorated. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the tone from a work standpoint, I can't disagree with that. It certainly wouldn't have hurt had he been in camp right from the jump. That's for damn sure. All right, Anthony, I got to roll to a break. For those of you on hold, stay there. Paul, Jason, Gary, Kevin, Lap, Kurt, we've got an open line if you want to jump in. The question is, what's the one thing you'd go back and fix from this last off season before this dreadful regular season? What would you do? What would you undo? A lot of you have listed some of the things on my list. My number one is, with all of the experienced defensive coordinators that were out there, I would have thought about making a move in the offseason. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. From T, he writes, well, I would have signed Robbie Chosen, Traylon Burks, and Chris Moore earlier so they could have developed some chemistry with our quarterbacks. Yeah, that's funny. What's the one thing, if you could go back and do or undo from the off season? My number one, and you guys have gotten some of the others. It was close. Like, I do think in hindsight, 1 year, $10 million in Jacksonville for De'Ami Brown, a guy that was a legitimate, deep threat, was great also in the bubble and in the screen game. I would have brought De'Ami Brown back. I do think they wanted to bring Zacchaeus back. But I think Zacchaeus wanted an opportunity to maybe even play more. They thought, I think, at one point in the offseason that they were going to get Zacchaeus back. I forget who else mentioned it. Maybe it was Paulie. Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, I wrote down, more defensive talent. Look, Milton Williams, they signed Kinlaw instead, and Kinlaw's been a good ad for sure. I've got another one that I haven't mentioned, two others that I haven't mentioned, but I think number one for me would be, I would have been do we have the right guy in Joe Witt Jr. to get more out of less? Because we don't have enough. We need to, really scheme up some defense here. And I know that Quinn is a defensive head coach, and a lot of what they do defensively has Quinn's fingerprints all over it. But there were some really experienced defensive coordinators out there: Brandon Staley, Saleh, Anarumo, Ulbrich, who's been with Dan before, Dennis Allen, etc. So, yeah, I think that's they eventually got to where they got to. And I want to be clear: I don't know enough to know that it was a big part of the absolute meltdown of the defense, but it was part of it. It was definitely part of it. Max is kind of with some of our other callers. You would have figured out a way to get the Terry deal done and get him in earlier, because that was a bit of a tone setter for the season. Let's go to Gary. Gary, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Kevin. I was not a big fan from the beginning of the Laramie Tunsil deal. Okay. I had a problem with giving up so many draft. I mean, you're looking at maybe 3 to 4 young draft picks that they could have brought in for a left tackle with this on his second team being traded. Okay. Now, I thought it was for different reasons. I thought that maybe he had an attitude problem, or there was something that was about him that they didn't like. Now, that hasn't turned out to be true. He hasn't been a headache to our knowledge or anything like that. But if I had to rewind all over again, and I don't think anybody would say, hey, look, we're bringing in this guy to protect our franchise quarterback. And if someone would have told you when that deal was made, oh, by the way, we have a crystal ball and your franchise quarterback is going to miss the majority of the season for multiple injuries, I don't think you make that trade. Okay. And that's the situation that we have right now, where we're not feeling it right now, but we're going to feel it in April of this year and April of next year when we're drafting. And we have to rebuild this roster with young players, not through free agency, because we don't have the money to do that. Okay. Everyone says we have a lot of cap space, but you have to sign half of your roster, over half of your roster through free agency. That doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room. If I had to rewind, I would not make the Laramie Tunsil trade. I think he's a great player, but you don't need a great player at left tackle. What has been shown over the years for Super Bowl winning teams is you need a very above average left tackle, but you don't need the very best one. Okay. And I think that was a problem. I think that's been a problem for this regime right now, is they've given away too much talent through the draft by going and getting older players. And I think that's going to hurt them in April and next April. And they don't have a lot of premium draft picks. They have, a first and a third here, first and a fourth here, but those second, third, fourth, and fifth round picks are where you really build up your roster.
I get it. So Gary, here's what I would say. I'm actually surprised you feel that way now. I think in the moment, debatable. I think for me, post seeing him play 11 games, this was an excellent 10 out of 10 trade. Remember, they gave up a third and a fifth in last year's draft, but they got back a fourth in last year's draft. And then they gave up their second and fourth in the upcoming draft for Tunsil. It is one of the hardest positions in the sport to find somebody who is truly elite as a pass protector. And he's one of the 6 or 7 in the league that can do it. So I feel like that was, in hindsight, 10 out of 10. I think in the moment, I liked the deal. I did have some of the reservations you did, which is, well, why is Houston with a bad offensive line dealing him? What is the issue? Well, penalties were an issue. You know, a lot of the pre-snap penalties with him over the last couple of years were issues. Fortunately, we don't have that issue with him really this year. But to me, sitting here now after watching him for 11 games and understanding who he is, there's no way I would undo that trade. In fact, I think the value for it's a bit undervalued, what we gave up for somebody of his caliber. Because really what you gave up, the second and fourth this year when you gave it up is the equivalent to really, you know, a second and a half and a fourth and a half. And you also thought, remember, that these picks were going to be late in the rounds. They're not. They're going to be earlier in the rounds. You didn't project that clearly. But getting back that fourth for what was the third and fifth last year, I think it was at the very least a very fair deal. Now, the big part of it, and the reason you didn't have to give up a first for him, is because you got to pay him. You got to pay him in this offseason, which they will do.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, a second, third, and a fourth, and a fifth round pick, when you're a talent evaluator, you think those draft picks are going to end up being starters. I don't think that left tackle was such a deplorable position for us last year that we needed to give up 4 potential starters.
But it wasn't. But they weren't comfortable in it. Okay, I know what you're saying, and I was a bit surprised too that they didn't feel like they had seen enough to be comfortable with. Maybe they drafted their left tackle of the future, but clearly they did not feel that way.
Absolutely they did.
Yeah.
I mean, but why not draft Connerly then and put Connerly at left tackle? I just think when you start trading for players that are 30 and above, and with that price tag on them, you don't give up 4 young players for that. I just don't believe.
I mean, you're 4 young players. You say, you know, these are starters. You know, 4th and 5th rounders are not projected future starters. They can turn into them, but more often than not, they don't. So you got a 4th back, and you gave up, you gave up a second and a third, basically. I got to move on. Thanks, Gary. Good call. Let's go to Kevin in Arlington. Kevin, what's the one thing you'd go back and do or undo from the offseason?
Hey, Kev, thanks for taking my call. Just real quick on De'Ami Brown. He has a grand total of 19 receptions, averaging 11 yards per catch and a touchdown. De'Ami Brown is doing Jag things for the Jags. So everybody sell down on De'Ami Brown. My God.
Well, he didn't, but by the end of last year, he was a significant contributor for us in our offense.
He got hot, Kev. I mean, I think he's regressed to his norm, but we can have that debate separately.
It was 1 year, $10 million is what he got.
Okay, but, you know, I don't see De'Ami Brown being more than a Jag. Okay, he had a nice couple playoff games, and I'm glad.
You know what? You might be right. You might be right. But here's the point. Could they have used him this year with all of the injuries? Massively. It would have been a massive help. He would have been the number. He would have been the number 1 out there. He would have had an opportunity to be their number 1 without all the receivers they lost. But that's fine. It's not like I was a huge De'Ami Brown fan either. And in the moment, I wasn't so displeased that they moved on from him. But I think in hindsight, God, did they need more speed on offense? And he has that and playmaking ability. And look what he did in the postseason, right? So, yeah.
I'm not saying, this is what I was saying last summer. Okay, this is a total hindsight for me.
This is all hindsight.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying what I would do because it's not like I felt bad about something and now, I said it then. I didn't say it then. So here's
he had
the thing.
36 catches over his final 7 games and averaged over 15 yards per reception So he was a good fit.
Comment about Brown.
He was a good fit. for here.
Yeah, I have a bigger point. I was just making the point that I don't understand.
Fair enough. What's your number one?
So my bigger point is, and let's go back to Marcus Mariota after the Dolphins game. What was the quote? We aren't the team we thought we were. What I've been most concerned about, big picture, I'm the big picture guy. Team culture is nice, okay? But self-scouting and getting that right is even more important. It's important to have players who perform, that are available and productive. That's what matters most. Culture is nice, but do you have the right players? And now that we have a chance to go back in an imaginary world and fix things, to me, and I'm hoping actually this still happens, I was stunned when I learned that our college scouting department is the exact same college scouting department was for Rivera, and some of the guys go back to Bruce Allen.
You've said that before. It's not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same.
It's Kevin Gribble, the director, and his 6 scouts. All the college scouts are exactly the same.
Oh, you're talking college, because the overall director of player personnel is David Blackburn.
Okay, but again,
if
you're going to be a drafting, Kev, let me finish, please. If you're going to be a draft and develop team, which they want to be, they don't want to spend money on free agency. They want to draft and develop. And they made the Lattimore trade.
Why would you say that? They just traded away 8 picks.
And you don't hit on them, you can't be a draft and develop team. And this is my issue.
Why are they a draft and develop team? So far, they haven't proven to be that, right? They've traded 8 picks.
Want to be, but they haven't changed their scouting staff up to go and get the right players in college. I think this is a huge glaring red flag, and nobody's talking about it.
You've talked about it before, but there are new additions. It's not the exact same scouting department.
It's the same college scouting department, Kevin. Every single guy is the same from before. They have 6 regional scouts. They have Tim Gribble, who leads the college scouting. All of those guys were there before Adam. Every last one of them.
Okay.
It's an issue.
Fair, but at this point, you're talking about 30 games to evaluate the 2 drafts. So clearly you think that they have drafted poorly in these 2 years with these college scouts.
I've seen that they drafted right with the 2nd pick in the draft, which had 3 quarterbacks that you'd take. You had Williams, you had Daniels, and you had May. I'm glad they took Jayden. He was the best of 3. I still believe he's the best of 3. But I'm not impressed, Kev. The guys that we thought were good last year, Newton and Sand, were still upside-wise. They've regressed terribly this year. I'm very concerned about our inability to go get college players who can come in and play for us.
How do you know it's not a development problem?
Kevin, I see other teams all the time draft players who are playing and contributing right away. It happens in Philadelphia.
And ours did last year. Thankfully, they had all the players that contributed right away last year, like the quarterback, like Sanders still, like Brandon Coleman. This time last year, you were convinced Brandon Coleman was the left tackle of the future.
Hey, Brandon Coleman is a great swing tackle. He was hurt, and so
that's not what you thought a year ago, though.
Really able to train this last offseason at guard. Okay, I'm glad we have Brandon Coleman. I think Brandon Coleman could play, but again, I'm just saying.
I'm actually more surprised that you're not upset that Emmanuel Forbes isn't still in uniform.
That's a problem too. Obviously they missed that.
Well, that would be a developmental problem more than a draft problem, right? With the same college scouting group.
All right. Well, Kevin, you can cherry pick. Are you telling me overall?
I'm not cherry picking. I'm just telling you what I've told you. In our back and forth on the air and off. I do not have the ability that apparently you have, which is to evaluate the 2024 and 2025 draft with major declarations on any players other than the one that played at an absolute otherworldly level beyond anything we had ever seen in his rookie year.
And we all love that. And we're all happy about that. When you pick second overall, you hope you get Jayden Daniels and not Chase Young. Okay? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
But I just think
could have been Chase Young, right? Could have been J.J. McCarthy.
Again, Kevin,
but it's too early on McCarthy. I know you love McCarthy. I think you wanted McCarthy.
I'd say it's pretty low. We're 3-8, Kevin. We might not.
We're 3-8. 3-8, Kevin, because
maybe we'll
none of
beat
the
the Giants.
players
Maybe
have
we'll
been
beat the
able to
Giants.
play this year. That's why we're 3-8. As
all
far
right.
as Brandon
You
Coleman
continue to
and
cling
Mike
to it's all about
Sanderstill
injuries,
and
I
Johnny
disagree.
Newton,
It's not all
I'm
about
giving them more than 20-something games. That's all. That's where you and I disagree. I think you got to take time, and I think guys like Emmanuel Forbes are proving that out. Some of the guys that just take time.
Can I just ask a question? Are you surprised that there's not one new college scout?
I didn't know that until you brought it up. I just know that their overall upper levels of the front office are completely new. And their overall director of player personnel, which is the guy that works. Hold on. You asked me a question. Adam Peters, the general manager, Lance Newmark, the assistant GM, and then David Blackburn. The three biggest hires were not here. You're right. Tim Gribble's been here for a while. And look, one of the things you can't do in your first year, but I would imagine by the third year, you can have significant turnover. You can't fire everybody because not everybody you want is available. These are organizations that are made up of, 15, 20, 25, 30 people in these, player personnel departments. So a lot of guys you have to keep. Same with coaching staff. Sometimes you have to keep some of those people that are there because you can't go out and replace everybody. But yes, you brought that to my attention, no doubt.
We're entering a third off season very soon. I'm concerned because I know they want to be a draft and develop team. And so far, slim pickings on the draft returns. It is early. It is developmental. You make a good point about Forbes. Look how he's shining in Los Angeles, although it helps to have that front four in Los Angeles. But neither – I want what's best for the team like you do. And
I think the draft and develop theme that you've brought to this – and I got to break the draft and develop theme when they traded 8 picks between the deadline last year and the beginning of free agency in this upcoming year. That's not really a draft and develop strategy. They picked 5 players last year. They'll pick 6. A draft and develop strategy would be accumulating more picks. It's not what they've done so far. And I don't think, by the way, I'm not going to suggest that wasn't the plan initially, because I think you're probably right. But once last year happened, they recalibrated the recalibration, and they decided that this was a window they had to take advantage of. Hence the Lattimore, hence the Tunsil, hence the Debo trades. So the draft and develop may be what they wanted to be. It isn't what they've been so far. And hopefully that can start.
And I hope it does
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
I hope. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, thanks for the call. I got to roll.
Thanks
as always. We'll do this for another segment. I see everybody on hold. Go ahead with, the answer to the question, which is, what's the one thing you'd go back and fix from the offseason? What's the one thing you'd go back and do or undo from the 2025 Washington offseason? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Jayden Daniels is part of a team contingent out at Northwest Field in Landover, handing out Thanksgiving meals, taking pictures with fans. Daryl Green's out there. Mark Klaus, the new team president's out there. Mark Hines out there. Doc's out there. Jayden Daniels is out there as well, and he was asked about the possibility of returning this season, and he said, if I'm healthy and ready to go, I want to be out there. Closed quote. 301-230-0980. We'll do this for another segment. Let's get to the point, answer the question, because I want to get through all of you that are on hold. The question, simply put, is if you could go back and fix something from the offseason, you could do something or undo something, what would it be? Lap, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, Lap.
I like to call about the scouting or like you were saying, player development, and what he was saying about the players we selected. That was a good point. I like G's point, and I like Paulie's point as well. I'm gonna say just Dan Quinn, bro. Like I'm gonna tell you why I say Dan Quinn. If you look at the way we lost in that title game, and you look at the way he's lost in Dallas, now mind you, he wasn't a head coach, but you could see the defeat on his face. This is why I didn't want Dan Quinn. So, and you look at the Super Bowl he had. In all the big games, he looks like he's defeated, like he doesn't know, like he's probably a good coach, people's coach or whatever. But we need, we need a different voice. But I'm going to give him.
you would have made a head coaching change in the offseason. Am I getting that right?
No, not.
Oh, okay.
Not make a head coaching change. I'm just saying he gotta step up and do his job. That's what I'm saying. Like I said to this Lunel, Joe Gibbs is the only coach we've had that made the playoffs twice. And every coach that we've
George
had
Allen
recently, all of them have made the playoffs one time.
George Allen made the playoffs multiple times.
I'm gonna give him a chance, Kevin. I'm gonna give him a chance. Year 3, he got to show me something. But if he can't show me nothing, even like you talking about culture and people got to know where they need to be and do their job. So if you can't do that in year 3, you don't need to be coaching this team, and we need to go in a different direction.
So what was your answer to the question? What would you go back and do or undo in the offseason?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm betting. Sorry.
It's okay.
Brown. I would have kept De'Ami Brown.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Lap.
Yep.
Let's go to Kurt in Hagerstown. Kurt, go ahead.
Kevin, thanks for taking my call, man. Okay,
Sure.
You're right on the point with the defensive coordinator, the scheme, man. It's scheme, depth, and people playing out of position. I'm going to say it over and over and over again, man. Quan is a nickel corner. Mikey is a zone corner. He's a great zone corner. He's smart. He's out of position. You bring Will Harrison to play Cam Chancellor and Jeremy Chin. He's not that. He's not a Buffalo safety, man. That's why he got hurt. He can't play big safety. He's another nickel. We got 3 nickels, putting them all in different spots where they're not playing, where they're supposed to be playing. And that's where the development doesn't come into place. That's why Emmanuel Forbes didn't work out here, because we put him on A.J. Brown in an island when he should have been cornerback 4, learning and developing and getting in acclimated to the game slowly. 1 year, 2 years. It takes some of these guys 3 years to learn these positions.
No
Quarterbacks take like 7 to 10 years.
No doubt.
Sometimes even more, man. You got it's like changing coaches and this and that, man. Get people in the right position to make big plays. If another example, Luvu's like LB4 on most people's teams. He's a slashing.
He's not LB4.
Tackle for loss linebacker. He is not a scrape and fill linebacker. He's not going to.
He's not scrape and fill, but he's not linebacker 4. I mean, to me, Luvu's more of an edge, actually, in pass rushing situations.
He's kind of like a Scheme Pacific. He's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, which means he shouldn't be like your starting main centerpiece linebacker or one of your big top defensive players. He's actually like a great rotational piece.
Yeah.
We got a 3-4 set of players when we don't really run any base 3-4 packages with.
So what specifically would have been your number one? Would you would have moved Quan to nickel corner? You would have kept Sanders still, played a lot more zone.
Yep, definitely. We needed linebackers who could cover, give people a chance to play like McGee, get Wagner out of there, let him be a linebacker coach on the sideline. We needed depth, 2, 3, 4 corners, safeties. Will Harris was not the guy to do it. Quan Martin is not a free safety, so there you got no defensive back. You bring in Amos, who's your best corner, and he's a puppy. You know what I mean? Like what did you guys expect when we were talking this summer and everybody was calling in talking about corners? We got no corners to cover anybody. And we're not getting to the pass.
Well, we were
No,
hearing
not
actually
getting to the
during
quarterback
training
because we
camp
don't
how
have the
great they looked with no Terry in training camp.
They look terrible. I was telling people that the defensive backs was terrible. People calling in saying Bill Crosby Meredith, Barry Sanders, get the hell out of here. Anybody that wants to tank on games or don't play people that are healthy, you know what? Go find Paulie down in DC. Let him punch you right in the face. I'm not tanking on anything. I was walking home with my kid yesterday, and some 10-year-olds called us to play some football, or vice versa. And I got my 7-year-old, Kevin. You think I'm gonna tank? You think I'm gonna let these kids go and walk up and down the field on me and my little son, and they're 3 years older than us?
I hope you didn't start scheming up plays. I hope you let them figure it out on their own.
You know what? They're going to figure it out when they got a talent and they got to face the challenge and they got to beat it.
Yeah.
They can't quit.
Damn
my
right.
son was the littlest one out there, and he didn't even know what to do. He's grabbing the ball, running in the opposite direction.
Listen, we were getting our ass kicked in scrimmages, and I told them, keep pressing us. Keep pressing. We need the work. Yeah, I got to go. Thanks, Kurt. Good call. Good call. I got to get to Aveen. Aveen, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I got a question for your answer because it doesn't make the most sense to me. I'll ask you this. If you are an in-demand, big-name, established defensive coach, so like what Schwartz might be this year, what Fangio was a couple years ago, what Dennis Allen and whoever else, Brandon Staley, were last year.
Yeah.
You are clearly looking to go to a team with an
offensive guy. Yes, that's fair.
So you have full autonomy of the defense. So
right, Jeff Ulbrich is in Atlanta with Raheem Morris, who is a defensive head coach, and he has ties to Dan. But no, you're right. Dennis Allen being with Ben Johnson. Saleh's obviously with Kyle again. Brandon Staley is with Kellen Moore, right? Kellen Moore in New Orleans. Yeah.
So it just seems like it feels like it's rare where you see a big name guy go to a team where the head coach is on their side of the ball.
No doubt.
Like the head coach on their side of the ball hires somebody from underneath them.
Right.
So I don't know if it's possible we get a big name defensive coordinator with Dan Quinn and how much autonomy Dan Quinn will let them have. So that's my only concern about that. But just for a quick answer, I think we probably need to be more splashy in free agency. I mean, it might not sound like the smartest thing, but our response to being, one of the worst defenses last year was to sign a bunch of.
Aaron Glenn did hire Steve Wilkes, just FYI.
Okay. I'm not sure how in demand Steve Wilkes was. I mean, he got fired, but yeah,
understood. There are a couple of examples, but you're right. It's a good point. Yeah, I just wanted more experience. In hindsight, right, I think that I wanted somebody that could get more out of less, and I don't know that we had that.
Yeah, I would love Jim Schwartz. I'm just not sure it's possible if you would want to coach under Dan Quinn.
Well, it'd be interesting, though, right? It'd be interesting if Raheem gets, knocked out of Atlanta. In thinking about the guys with Quinn ties, Al Harris, Jeff Ulbrich, Raheem Morris, in terms of guys that potentially could be available in the offseason. Yeah. But remember one other thing, Aveen, I'm just going to make this point. Dan Quinn did sort of present himself upon the hire as someone who was going to delegate in a big way. So he never had any intention of being the defensive coordinator, calling plays on game day. It was one of the big, learning experience takeaways he had when he was not a head coach after the Atlanta experience. But go ahead. What's the one thing that you would have done?
Yeah, I think just our strategy on defense past couple of off seasons is not to splurge and it's to find a bunch of undervalued players.
Yeah.
But we're probably at the point where we need to get some established players. I mean, Josh Sweat is having a great season in Arizona, and that's a player, like, we had the most cap space. We could have gotten more established players on defense. I think we need more established players, and, to stop. A lot of our risks have actually paid off, like Jacob Martin, and we were betting on Dorrance Armstrong this offseason. But I think we need to have more of a sure thing, like, instead of taking all these small little risks.
Right. Thanks, Savine. Good call. Let's go to Frank. Yeah. Frank, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I'll keep this short and sweet. One of your callers already kind of addressed this with Tunsil. I would have chosen either Tunsil or Connerly. I think I understand the theory of investing in the offensive line, but I think that was just too many pieces to put there when we did have needs, especially on defense or in the wide receiver. I would really, generally in our receiving core, I would have said we needed height or speed, just somebody out there to extend the field. And then obviously paying Terry, just improving the locker room. So that's kind of my order there.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, I Connerly Jr. was not on anybody's bingo card going into the draft. We were all thinking DN, pass rusher, maybe a wide receiver, maybe Travion Henderson. Some of the names that we talked about, if they dropped, would have been possibilities. Even the guy from UCLA who's playing really well in Cleveland, Schwessinger. Amanawari was a guy whose name came up multiple times before the draft. For me, the pass rushers, Ezeraku, who went in the second round, Tia Mulalau, who ended up playing and is part of Indy's team, he went second round. Nick Scoughton, remember, went second round. Some of the guys that were talked about at 28 or 29. What did we have? 28 or 29? 29, right? Because it's 32, 31, 30, 29, final four teams. Pierce, was a big debate if he had dropped. Mike Green was kind of in that conversation. There were a lot. We did not expect, especially after the Tunsil trade, another tackle. But I think they were in position of, and I think it's going to be that way again in April, it's going to be best player available because they need so much. And Connerly was the best player on their board. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jason. Jason, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kev. How you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So the answer to the quick question is I would avoid that Terry nonsense. They didn't have to extend them. You've gone on about this. But if I can take a second, and I'll be as quick as possible, I'd like to try to change your mind, if I could, or play defense attorney here about Jayden not playing the rest of the season. There's a part of it that I'd like to just try to convince you. And I only know about Jayden because of your show. You and Denton talked about him, and I started watching him. That game against Florida was amazing. And when we got an opportunity, we had to draft him. I was like, oh, wow. I watched all of his college games. You can watch them all back. He's amazing. He's always been skinny, but he was even good as a freshman in Arizona. Everybody understands that there's a point in the game where you can pull him out, and everybody, even the coach, has said, yeah, he was in the Seattle game too long. I think you can make the same argument for a season, and this is why. The worst case scenario for us right now is late December, early January, he has a catastrophic injury.
Late December, early January is not what I'm talking about.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
I'm talking about, I'm not shutting down my franchise starting quarterback with a third of the season left, 30% of the season left, 5 games left. I'm just not. You want to talk about totally week 17 and week 18? That's a completely different conversation.
Well, I think the hardest part of this is going to be Jayden. I mean, the last break you came in off of, he's like, hey, I want to play. He's going to always want to play. Herman said on your podcast the other day, like, he doesn't miss practices, he doesn't miss game. He wants to play. And this year, he hasn't really been injured. I'm going to call him Nicks. Because according to Jayden, the knee was a non-issue. He could have played immediately, right? I just think they have to be careful. The biggest thing for this quarterback, in my opinion, is I want to see, if I showed you a picture of Tom Brady when he was drafted, he was a skinny little dude, right? I showed you a picture of MJ when he was drafted by the Bulls. He's a skinny little dude. Both of those guys had to rebuild their bodies to compete in their sports. Football's a lot more physical than basketball. Jayden needs to.
Didn't we think that there were
physicality.
pictures circulating this summer about how much, muscle he'd put on? That's always been a concern for me. It was my only concern, but it wasn't because he had a significant injury history. I think he's got to play. I disagree with all of you. I appreciate you making the case. You did not convince me. It's a different conversation if we're talking about week 17 and week 18. But if he's available on December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, and let's hope it doesn't for this organization if he comes back on that day, I'm playing my starting quarterback, especially considering that he has barely played this year and hasn't played at all with his guys. Look, it would be a new trend. It certainly would be a new trend because teams don't take their starting quarterbacks off the field in early December. They just don't. And I don't think Washington should either. I think it would actually create some issues inside that locker room. And I think the chance of him getting hurt in the opener next year is the same. Now, would I call the game differently? I said that as part of this whole thing. I would not be running quarterback powers and quarterback counters as if the lives depended on winning this game. I certainly would have a lot more quick game if Robbie Chosen and Chris Moore and some of the guys they've had out there. I'd certainly try to protect him with a run game. Hopefully the defense, it not facing Detroit and Seattle and Kansas City in back-to-back weeks can play a little bit more where the other team has to punt every once in a while. So, yeah, there's a lot of that would go into it, just like it would with a fifth-year guy who's your starting quarterback if players are down and you're playing meaningless games in terms of the standings. But I'm not sitting my quarterback with 30% of the season left. Let me move on. I appreciate it. Ian's been on hold. Ian, go ahead. What's the one thing you'd go back and do or undo from the offseason?
Since so many people focused on Adam Peters, I'm going to focus on the organizational arrogance in the preseason plan for Jayden Daniels. For him to throw 0 passes as a second-year quarterback is beyond foolish, delusional, and was second-guessed by many people. For them to be like, whoa, that one series looked great. Did you see some of those impromptu runs? He's good to go for this preseason. We're done. That was horrendous, and I think they're paying the price for it. And I absolutely agree with you that he should play just because he needs practice. He hasn't played enough football for him to just sit out the rest of this season. And heck, even next preseason, if they're going to continue this idiotic plan of not playing him and just expect him to be Superman all the time. It doesn't work that way. This league is way too hard.
How much did Drake May play in the preseason? Because he didn't play a lot in the preseason, did he?
That would be a great comparison.
He threw 5 passes in the opener against us. So he played a series against us, and that was it. And Jayden played a series in the second game against Cincinnati, and that was it, right?
Correct.
Yep. But did not throw a pass, to your point. He played, though, because he had the touchdown run where Cincinnati decided not to, take his head off on that touchdown run. Yeah. Look, let me just say this. It's not the way I would describe it. I know you and your hysterical, typical self would describe it as organizational arrogance. I think it was just a decision that because there weren't a lot of players that were going to be out there with him, because he did play more the previous year as a rookie. I think some of what went into it was they just didn't have their starting offense to put out there in general. But would I have liked to have seen him throw a few passes, take a quarter and just do nothing but drop back and try to get into some rhythm with some receivers, even if those weren't the receivers that were going to play with him? Yeah, I've always said that about preseason. To me, it's not even about the run game, or it's obviously not about a game plan. we saw it. I've mentioned this many times. Going back to the Brady days in New England, going back to the Russell Wilson days in Seattle, there were a few quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, I think, did it. Their coaches just decided we're going to get out there for a quarter and they're going to throw it 18 times if we stay on the field, and then that's going to be it. We're not handing the ball off. It's all basically we're just going to pitch and catch it around and get them in rhythm in a real environment. I'm not against that. I just wouldn't describe it as organizational arrogance.
We can agree to disagree on that point, but let me follow up on your point. We agree that he should play the remaining games the minute he's healthy for all the reasons you stated. But where you and I disagree is when you're like, I would change the game plan. I think that's the big concern with Jayden Daniels is
it's not a drastic change. Okay. It's about there are certain plays that even in a game that is a must win, I hate. I've talked about these going back to the opening game in 2024. I don't like my franchise quarterback playing like Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson. That's being a true running back in a lot of the offense. I don't want that. They don't do it a lot, but I don't want it done at all. That's what I would take out.
I agree with you, but he himself puts himself in those positions, which is.
But those are called plays I'm talking about, not RPOs, not zone reads, quarterback power, quarterback counter. Those plays are designed to have all 11 in the run game, and your quarterback is the running back on that play. And that play 9 times out of 10 ends in a pile. It's just my personal preference. I'd rather not see him in a pile. I'd rather give him the chance to slide or get out of bounds on a run, which you have that opportunity as a scrambler and as a zone read. And sometimes in quarterback draw, you have that ability. All right, I got to run. Sorry. I got to run. We got to get to Herm Edwards. He's going to join us next. Joining me right now, Herm Edwards. Most of you know Herm from ESPN. He does a phenomenal job as an NFL analyst. Most of you know that he coached Jayden Daniels at Arizona State. Most of you know that Herm was a two-time NFL head coach with the Jets and the Chiefs in the 2000s. And at least some of you know that he was one hell of a player with the Philadelphia Eagles in the 70s into the 80s and was involved in one of the most famous plays in NFL history, the 1978 Miracle in the Meadowlands play. We may talk about that. We've talked about that play with Coach before. Maybe we'll come back to it at the end. But, it's interesting. I was looking in preparation for talking with you this afternoon at the years in which you were coaching in New York and then in Kansas City. And one of the things that is really interesting about your very first head coaching job in New York with the Jets is it came in the 2001 season. That, of course, was opening day, September 9th, and then 2 days later, 9/11. And then when you guys came back with the rest of the league after a week off following 9/11, you faced Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots in that week 2, which actually was week 3 that year because of 9/11. But that was the year that they ended up winning their first Super Bowl. So I want to ask you about what you thought of the Patriots here in a moment. But what are your recollections about being a first-time head coach and after your first game as a coach, 9/11 happens?
Well, I can remember the cancellation of the games, and then obviously our first game back, we played the New England Patriots in New England, in Foxborough, and I can remember visiting with Coach Belichick on the sideline in the pregame. We were just sitting there talking, and there were a lot of flags, obviously, opening day at any ballpark, but especially in New England. You can imagine their colors are red, white, and blue as well. So a lot of flags being flown, and we were both standing there and looking at each other, and we both looked at each other and said almost the same thing. I said, I don't know how my guys are going to play. And he said, I'm the same way. I have no idea what's going to happen. I said, Coach, let's just enjoy it. We're back to playing football. Let's just enjoy the day. And we had no idea how we were going to play and how those players were going to play.
Yeah.
None. Zero, right? And it was we just want to get back to playing football. And when they sang that national anthem, there was not a dry eye in the stadium. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. It was like, wow. And you just, things like that, you put in your brain and you go, you know what? I mean, the red, white, and blue flag in America was never more powerful for me growing up. My father was a military man. I saluted the flag every day growing up. I mean, I get it. I get all that. But that day was something special.
Yeah, it was emotional everywhere. I mean, I remember the Skins actually played the first Monday night game after 9/11. Marty Schottenheimer was coaching his one and only season here. And the season did not start off well. I'm trying to think. You probably coached against Marty a couple of times, right? When he was in San Diego, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but I'll take it further than that. I was on Marty's staff in Kansas City.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, yeah, but you're right. Yeah, I coached against him when he was with the Chargers and I was with the Jets, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, you guys played, I think, a playoff game together that you guys won out there. But, that particular season, and I want to come back to the Patriots in a moment, that particular season, Marty, in his first and only year under, horrible ownership, as we all know, started off 0-5, and Herm, he went 8-3 over the final 11 with Tony Banks at quarterback. And anybody that knew anything about football was like, okay, finally, we're about, as a Redskin fan, we're about to be back. And then Snyder said that he didn't want it to continue that way anymore. So anyway, back to the Patriots. Did you have any sense early in that season or when you played them later in the season? You played them later in the season and lost by a point at home. Your team was a 10-6 team, went to the postseason, played the Raiders before the Raiders would eventually play the Patriots in that famous snow game. But did you have a sense at any point that the Patriots were going to make this run that they eventually, made?
No, and it's funny because that was Brady, correct?
Yeah.
If I recall right.
Yeah, well, it was not only Brady, but it was the season of Brady and Bledsoe.
Yeah, and I know this because when we had played earlier, we knocked Bledsoe out
in the first game.
Yes, in New England.
Yeah,
and Bledsoe's running on the side, and we hit him, and he lands down by my feet. And I'm hollering for our trainer as well. They come over and get him, and then all of a sudden he leaves the game, and in comes number 12. And we beat him that day. It was a low-scoring affair, and from that day, Tom Brady became the starter.
He became the starter, and then Bledsoe, remember, got the opportunity briefly in the postseason in the championship game against the Steelers. But then Brady ended up coming in and starting the Super Bowl, and the rest is history. So did you have any sense of Brady that early? Because you basically got to see him for his first real snaps.
Yeah. You watch him, and we knew when he came out of Michigan, we had scouted him, but we didn't need a quarterback. We had Chad Pennington at that point, young quarterback. And, you didn't know he was going to be Captain America.
Right.
He was Tom Brady, but you didn't know eventually he was going to be Captain America and win, 6 Super Bowls or how many they won. And so it's just kind of ironic, it's like you sit there and you go, okay, and here we go. And here he comes in the game. And it was a funky game. I think we won 10-6 or something like that.
10-3, yeah.
And then 10-3, okay, and low scoring affair. And then all of a sudden, the next time they played us at home, I think they beat us, and he was the quarterback. And then all of a sudden, you just watched it grow. You watched his excitement and everything that went along with it. But no one imagined. I don't even think anyone, the Patriots fans, didn't imagine what was about to happen.
It's so interesting, right? Because we now are in this era of like quarterbacks, that we counted completely out that have resurrected their careers.
Yeah.
We're watching Daniel Jones this year. We've seen Baker Mayfield. We've seen Sam Darnold. And you coached and you played in an era where these guys were given plenty of time before they ever saw the field.
Right. No doubt. And then now you draft them. They got to play early. That's part of it because you're pressed to make them do that. And, it's a different league now. I mean, it's the league that I played in and coached in for the most part. It was starting to turn a little bit, but it was still a running league. It was a balanced league offensively, but now it's a passing league. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you got to be able to throw the football to score. I mean, and when you have a guy that can throw it, you build your team that way. You still want to run because you got to run to win, but you got to score points. You got to throw the football because of the way defenses play anymore. And you draft that way defensively. You got to get some guys that play on the perimeter, some edge, some edge rushers, and you got to get some corners that can cover. And on offense, you got to get some receivers that can catch it. And you got to have a quarterback that can throw it. And here you go.
I'm just sitting here and I'm going through some of those teams you had with the Jets, and someone who comes on this show with me all the time and is one of my favorite, former Washington players. You had him as a very young player, and that's Santana Moss. What do you remember about Santana?
God,
yeah.
Drafted him in the first round, and came out of Miami, a lot of hype. And he was, it was early in his career was too big for him. It was too big for him. And he was a great returner, and he dropped a lot of balls early in his career, and then he found his way. When he got to Washington, all of a sudden he became the guy that we thought he was going to become. It took him a couple of years, a lot of pressure on him. Being a first round pick and being in New York is tough, man. It's just tough. It's just a tough way. It's just a tough way to be, And to his credit, he found his way and went to Washington. And obviously, he had some great days in Washington. There's no doubt about that.
All right, let's talk about the quarterback here now, Jayden Daniels, and the difficult year that not only he's had with injuries, but the team has had. I'll get to the key question that everybody's asking here in a moment. But, you know, you watch this league every Sunday. You coach Jayden at Arizona State, so you know the issues that this team's had this year with injuries just across the board. What have you made of, you know, year two of, he's only played 5.5 games, but as his former coach, what did you see when he was out there?
Oh, that obviously, you know, he is your franchise quarterback. And I think the more they're around him, especially the offensive coordinator and who basically, Cliff Kingsbury is kind of unique. Cliff was on my roster with the Jets. When we had 1 year where we had like 5 quarterbacks, and he actually came on my roster. And then, you know, Cliff was in Arizona when I was at Arizona State.
Right.
He knows Jayden very well. He watched him play, you know, so he couldn't have gone to a better organization and to fit the system around him with obviously Cliff being the coach. So I just think that he's in a good place, a great organization. I told him that when he got drafted, I said, man, you're in a place you got great history now, and just understand that. And this fan base will circle the wagons around you, man, if you do what you got to do. And obviously they have done that. He's just got to get well again, you know. And he's not an injury guy. I know people say, well, he's a little. I know his time with me, he never missed anything, never missed practice, never missed a game. So, you know, in high school, we never missed practice, never missed games. So LSU didn't miss games, didn't miss practice. So, you know, it's just unfortunate what happened to him, but he'll get well, he'll come back, and they got their quarterback.
So he was cleared, you know, to practice, but no contact yet. And earlier today, Dan Quinn said that, you know, he's gonna be in practice, but unlikely to play on Sunday night against Denver. But I think most of us now believe he could be ready and cleared to play against the Vikings the following week. How would you handle moving forward? There are fans that, you know, are angst-ridden about him heading back out there in games that don't matter. So where are you on he's got to play if he's healthy with 4 or 5 games left in the season versus trying to protect him?
Well, look, and I understand the fans hesitate. You know, they don't want him to get hurt again. They went through that with Robert Griffin and all that. But I will tell you this, and I say this not as a coach. I don't say this as a coach about what I'm getting ready to say. When you're a football player, every game matters. They all matter. They do. And it doesn't matter how many you won, how many you lost. They matter. Because, you know, when you're a football player, it's not a career. You know, you can't say, well, I'm going to play for 10 years. No, you play week to week because you can get injured and you can be done. It's over. So it's not a career. It's an opportunity. And most guys that understand that, it doesn't matter how many you've won or lost. You just want to play.
Yeah.
Jayden wants to play. I know that kid. He wants to play football. That's what. See, I tell people all the time, you know what football players do? They play football.
Yeah.
That's what they do. When you're a football player, you play football. And it doesn't matter how many you won or lost. You go play football, man. So, you know, I'm not one to believe that, oh, well, you save him for this. What? He's a football player. That's what you do.
So would you, as a head coach, you know, let's say that he comes back and they're 3-9 with 5 games left. They've been mathematically eliminated or close to it. Would you play him in a way that was more protective? Would there be plays that you wouldn't call? How would you treat that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would play him in a sense of, he wants to play. I want him to play. He needs, you know, one thing he doesn't have right now. He doesn't have a lot of professional experience.
Right.
How do you get that? You got to play. I tell people all the time, the guy has no experience. Well, you know why? Because you don't play. If he plays, that's how you get experience. So let him go play. And look, Jayden's smart. I mean, it's just one of those freak accidents. That's all. It just happened. It's not. And I think, you know, did you run him on runs a lot? Probably not. Right? But you give him some because you're looking at it going, hey, you know, okay. But at the end, I mean, you just let him play and you tell him, like I used to tell him, hey, man, know when the journey's over and protect yourself.
The group that he's had out there, and even Marcus Mariota's had out there, I mean, this team's been, decimated by injuries. They just haven't had a full allotment really since almost week one. But it's possible he could get back out there with his guys, with Terry McLaurin, with Noah Brown, with Debo feeling good, and the offensive lines actually come around. But what if he doesn't? What if he's got these practice squad guys and guys they've pulled off the street over the last couple of months to play NFL football? Does that change your thinking at all?
No. And I think you call the game according to that. Cliff will call the game that way. Like, he knows the guys he has, and he's going to try to design some things to get them open. And all Jayden can do is throw it to them. They got to catch it. If they don't catch it, that's on them. And they know that. But I think when you sit in Jayden Daniels, and you walk in his shoes. I mean, he has to play. That's how he gains experience. And whether you have going to the playoffs or not, I mean, those are vital to him. He'll be much better for us next year for playing. He will be. And you know what else will happen? I mean, his team already respects him, but they'll even have higher regard for him now, because a lot of guys will say, "Man, that dude didn't need to play. He's playing." And if you're a fan, I know you're nervous. You don't want to get hurt, but when it's all said and done, and he plays and he gets through this last stretch of games, you're going to go, "Man, we really respect this guy. This guy's, he's our quarterback."
So have you stayed in touch with him this year? Have you talked to him at all?
Every once in a while we text, and he's busy, and I leave him alone. I mean, if something's up, he'll shoot me a text or something, but I kind of leave him alone. Earlier in the season, the preseason, I was texting him in and out, messing with him and laughing and, and stuff like that. And when he played the Eagles, I gave him a hard time. I said, I'd be nice to my former team now.
Well, they haven't
like
played
that.
him yet. They got two of them at the end of the year.
No.
Oh, in
yeah,
the championship game, you mean?
Yeah.
So
I'm laughing, and stuff like that with it. So.
Again, it's a very small sample size this year because he's only played 5.5 games.
Yeah.
But was there anything that you saw that, you thought, okay, well, that's not exactly the way it looked last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they've done now, they've designed it to his strength, and he's probably had some input in it, to knowing what he wants to do and what he likes. And that's what you got to do. You got to build the offense around the quarterback. And, you have so many different variables of what you can do with him, because, the first thing you realize defensively, he gets your attention because of his ability to make the announced play. And you're scared to death of that because of his ability to run. And Jayden's one of those guys, I tell people all the time, I said, look, he's a little bit of a long strider, but when he's running, it ain't for 5 yards.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's 20 yards, and he's down the field, and you're going, man, what? Yeah, but he shocks you. It's like, whoa, he just made a 20-yard run. Yeah, 20 yards ain't 5. It's 20, and you go, oh, boy.
Yeah.
And so you're nervous, and you got to design your defense in the sense that when he goes back to throw, it's like, okay, who's spying the guy? We got to have a guy on the rush that's spying him, or we got to have a linebacker sitting in that area, because if he leaves the pocket, we got to come tackle him. And then the problem is, first of all, the guy spying him, if he ain't fast enough, he can't catch him.
That is true. And we watched that all of last year. All right, real quickly on this crazy year. I mean, it was a crazy Sunday yesterday. I mean, New England, Denver, and Indy right now at the top of the AFC standings. The Bears lead the NFC North. Carolina is tied for the NFC South before their game tonight. Give me the teams that you really believe in, like true teams that you truly believe can win it all.
Well, the best team right now on the NFC side is the Rams.
Yeah.
Not even close. They're the most complete team right now. Quarterback is just playing out of his mind. He is playing really good. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's going to probably be MVP, but I said that 5 weeks ago. And they continue to win games. So that's one of the teams. I think, and then everybody else, you look at the NFC side, if you look at the North and you're going, okay, are the Chicago Bears that good? Well, we're going to find out. They're 8-3, and every time we say, they win another game. So, look, the record indicates who they are. Now, they got a tough schedule. The closing the schedule out, they play Green Bay twice. I think they play Kansas City. So they play some playoff teams now. We'll find out who they are. Eagles, stubbed their toe. Dallas beat them. That didn't surprise me. The way they played and got away from the run, and hopefully that's a lesson learned. They're not the same team they were last year, the Eagles, by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But they're still a playoff football team. Seattle, obviously, is a good football team. They can stay in games, and the fact that they're outstanding on defense. They're really, really good on defense. Green Bay and Detroit. I mean, they got the quarterback. They got pedigree. When they get in the playoffs, and all these teams are playoff in contention. We'll see. On the AFC side, no matter what people say, New England has 10 wins. They are what they are. Buffalo shorthanded.
Yeah,
they got the quarterback, and that's what they got, and he's remarkable. The Ravens kind of all of a sudden, Lamar Jackson doesn't look like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, he doesn't, does he? Tell me what you've seen.
Nah, I don't know if he's completely well. It just doesn't look like the same guy right now. Now, he's been out, so maybe he's trying to protect himself. Maybe he's not 100%, but he doesn't look explosive right now to me when he plays. Pittsburgh is okay, but, you're not afraid of Pittsburgh. The Colts are like, you still don't trust them, right? It's just, I don't know about the Colts, right? You just worry.
Right.
Look, Jacksonville, until Trevor Lawrence shows me he can win some more games like he did last week, I don't trust them. Now, the West, interesting in the West. Denver Broncos is a good football team. They got a really good defense too. They don't give you points. They got a young quarterback they got one of the better play callers in the league, Sean Payton. The Chargers are interested. I'm not quite sure yet. And the Chiefs aren't dead yet. They're just not. And I think when they were sitting there at 5-5, it was they're done. They ain't done yet now. Because they have great pedigree as far as playoff experience. I told everybody toward the beginning of the season, I said, you know what the Chiefs are? They're tired. They've played in so many extra games. They're just tired.
Yeah.
The season, they're a wore-out football team. And now they've kind of got their sea legs back. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can make a run.
Yeah, it's funny that you said it that way. Mahomes is having a much better season this year than he did last year, and here they are. They're fighting for their playoff lives. But last year, there were times where I said, some of these close games, it feels like they're bored and they want some close games just to have some excitement. Tired may be the more accurate way of putting it. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it'd be weird to not see the Kansas City Chiefs come January.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, you know what's great? And you look at the slate of it, there's about 9 or 10 teams on either side of the slate in the NFC or the AFC that are still in contention.
No doubt.
And if you're a fan of one of those teams, you're excited. The fact that, hey, if we can win 10 games or 9 games, we got a shot. And I tell everybody all the time, I said, look, 10 is the number. I said that 2 weeks ago. These teams that have 5 wins or more, it's a race to 10. It's a 7-game season. It's a race to 10. If you can get to 10, put 10 on the board, you're probably going to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I actually talked about this already, that this is one of those years. I agree with you. I think the Rams right now, and I think Seattle's the second best team personally, but I trust Matt Stafford a hell of a lot more than Sam Darnold. But the games we've got coming up here over the last third of this season, I mean, just starting on Thursday with the Lions and the Packers and the Chiefs and the Cowboys, it's just going to be because there are so many teams that aren't that far apart from one another. There are just going to be so many big games. I feel like there's more. There's one team you didn't mention, and I talked about them Friday after they won on Thursday night. Houston, to me, is a team that if they got in, their defense could carry them a long way. Do you agree or not?
Correct. No, you're absolutely 100% correct. And they're a hard watch. They're not pleasing to the eye when you watch them. There's nothing like you watch them, you go, I don't want to watch this. And then they win. You go, boy, they won another game. Just because you're right. They got another outstanding defense.
Wow. Yeah. Then they still have the Colts twice. They still play the Colts twice.
D'Amico's done a really good job, and they pride themselves on it, you know, and they're going to be a hard out if they get in because you can't score a lot of points on them, right?
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. As always, hope you're well. Enjoy all of your stuff on ESPN and enjoy the rest of the year. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you, my friend.
That was Herm Edwards. Always enjoy him. That was presented by Paramount Plus. Football Talk on Team 980, always presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every season, all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. Happy 85th birthday to one of the greatest winners of all time, and certainly this city's greatest coach of all time, Joe Jackson Gibbs, 85 years old. Back tomorrow, day before Thanksgiving. Lots of football. Chris is next.